Here we go again. The mainstream media is taking their battle positions against Donald Trump right before he takes office once again. And this time, well, we're seeing the interview this week with ABC's Kristen Welker. I don't think Trump is letting the media off that easily, but there's a few standout moments from this that I need to show you. So let's take a look at this before we dive in.
You would think if the press was unfair, like to me, the press was obviously unfair to me. The press, no president has ever gotten treated by the press like I was. And yet I got more votes than any Republican candidate in history, by far. It's not even close. So you say, what's that all about? The press has to straighten itself out because, honestly, it's lost all credibility. When that can happen, based on the press, I should have gotten no votes, none. And yet I got the highest number ever. And the reason is because I'm able to go on a show, even like yours, even though you're very hostile, I'm able to go on a show like yours. No, you are.
Well, hopefully you thought it was a fair interview. We covered a lot of policy ground.
It's fair only in that you allowed me to say what I say. But, the answers, the questions are, pretty nasty. But look, because I've seen you interview other people like Biden. And
I've never interviewed President Biden, actually.
When I say you, I'm talking metaphorically. I've seen George Stephanopoulos interview Biden, and he's a tough interviewer.
I still can't get over how Donald Trump has decisively defeated the mainstream media's power to shape the political narrative in the last decade. Not just that, Trump made a claim on Joe Rogan's podcast in the final stretch of the campaign, where he basically threw pollsters under the bus, saying that they can't be trusted, or implying that they're just a media manipulation tool. By the way, subscribe and hit the notification bell to join the conversation, and take a look at this.
I have a theory. These pollsters, they charge you a lot of money, too. They charge you $500,000 to do some stupid poll, and they interview like 251 people. I don't think they interview them in many cases. I don't want to get myself in too much trouble.
You think it's bullshit?
No, I think they sit there, they make a deal, they get $500,000, and they say, Trump's leading 51-49. They announce it, and everybody says, oh. Do you understand?
And you see that play out in this election in a way we've seldom seen. For example, a PBS poll right before election night came out claiming Kamala Harris was leading by a pretty significant 4% points against Donald Trump, and that was outside the already wide margin of error. There were several other polls that predicted the election a lot closer than it turned out to be. And then you'll look at the media and see a similar sight when Media Research Center called the election coverage by mainstream media the most slanted in history, with 85% against Donald Trump and 78% in favor of the Democrat candidate. And anyone that actually watched the legacy media across the political divide knew how painfully real this stark contrast was. And if you think about it, this was a pretty brave media campaign on behalf of Donald Trump to practically ignore the mainstream media and fully embrace alternative media, because this is the first time it has been done. But while doing that, he's dented legacy media to such an extent that it will take a lot of house cleaning to get back the public trust. But Trump still couldn't resist kicking a falling wall with a jibe against Kristen like this.
Let me ask you this about January 6th.
I wish you could be if you have such potential. If you could be just non-biased, you hurt yourself so badly. I'm telling you, they deleted and destroyed all the evidence. Everyone knows it. And you slough it off like it doesn't mean anything.
No, I'm just saying they deny it. That's all I'm saying.
Kristen, if I did it, you would be standing up in that chair shouting at me. And you know what I'd do? I'd say, you got me.
Honestly, this entirely felt like such a sorry attempt by the mainstream media to make amends with Donald Trump, in a similar vein as we saw Mike and Joe Scarborough go meet at Mar-a-Lago despite years of the worst media attacks comparing him to the German dictator. But Kristen Welker herself also had somewhat of a history of friction with Donald Trump when she was criticized by some for not letting him complete answers back in 2020 presidential debates against Biden. And perhaps to compensate for that, we saw a few cases of pseudo-journalism in this entire interview when she pretended to corner Donald Trump on issues like minimum wage only to be schooled in response about economic works.
Let me ask you about another aspect of the economy, sir, the minimum wage. The federal minimum wage has been $7.25 since 2009. There are 20 states that still have the federal minimum wage at $7.25. And I actually have a map. 19 of these states actually voted for you, sir. Mm-hmm. And you can see it right here. I don't know if you remember this, but during the debate in 2020, I asked you if you would raise the minimum wage. You said you would consider it. And so my question for you is, now that you are going back to the White House, for these 19 states that voted for you, are you going to raise the federal minimum wage?
It's a very low number. I will agree. It's a very low number. Let me give you the downside, though. Yeah. In California, they raised it up to a very high number. and your restaurants are going out of business all over the place. The population is shrinking. It's had a very negative impact. But there is a level at which you could do it, absolutely. Yeah.
What is that level, do you
I don't
think?
know. I mean, I really don't know. I can say this. You have a lot of businesses that are open and thriving because of the lower minimum wage. If you raise it too much, and you understand this, if California went crazy, they went crazy. And the restaurants are closing all over. Many more people are hurt.
So I hear you saying, similarly to sort of what you said in 2020, will you consider it? Is this something you're going to look at?
I'd want to speak to the governors. And the other thing that's very complicated about minimum wages is places are so different. Mississippi and Alabama and great places are very different than New York or California. I mean, in terms of the cost of living and other things. So it would be nice to have just a minimum wage for the whole country, but it wouldn't work.
Well, first of all, she said the federal minimum wage has been low since 2009, so why not put that question to the two Democrat administrations we've seen in those years whose entire manifesto often borrows from more left-wing economics? And why not pose the same question to Joe Biden, who's not raised the minimum wage up from $7.25, even when the cumulative inflation in his reign has been over 25%. So while the question itself seemed reasonable in isolation, it starts to make sense when you zoom out and compare to many other times that hosts like Kristen Welker have let Democrat leaders off the hook, especially when policies like this are part of their campaign promises to begin with. I like how Donald Trump didn't immediately discount or brush off the question, because in the evolving world of AI and job disruptions as well as the massive inflation, there might need to be a largely market-based solution of rising wages that require minimal government intervention, because of course wages don't exist in a vacuum. They're part of an extremely complicated web that ties to production prices, labor costs, and employment numbers that result in much larger disruptions from one wrong move. And if Kristen was actually looking for an answer, she wouldn't put the question of minimum wage and tariffs so far away from one another, because Donald Trump, the latter, is Donald Trump's real expected plan to bring down costs. But she did this more than once, touching on broad-based issues in a limited amount of time before just moving on. Here's something similar that happened on the question of Elon Musk's role in the administration.
Let's talk about Elon Musk, another interesting person.
He's very interesting.
Last month, one of your allies said, quote, he's behaving as if he's a co-president. Will you favor Elon Musk over other leaders of competitor companies like Jeff Bezos, Mary Barra?
No, Jeff Bezos called me. We're having dinner. As you know, Mark Zuckerberg came in. We had a really nice dinner. He asked to have dinner. I had dinner with him.
Very quickly, because we're going to talk about the election coming up, but you've tapped Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, to head up this Department of Government Efficiency.
Correct.
Which proposes cuts to the federal government. I think a lot of people hear that and they get concerned about Medicare and Social Security and
Not
Medicaid
going to have anything to do.
And defense spending.
We're talking
you
about
won't touch
theft,
Medicare, Social Security.
Abuse, fraud.
Okay.
No, I said to people, we're not touching Social Security, other than we make it more efficient, but the people are going to get what they're getting.
Simple, right? But you're still going to see this repeated across the legacy media, despite as clear of an answer from Donald Trump. For better or worse, Donald Trump does not like sharing the limelight, and he's not even going to let Elon Musk do that too much. So this new line of Musk being some sort of co-president just does not fly, at least not until we've seen how the administration runs and takes shape. And that's where the media's role as the government's watchdog comes in. But let me know in the comments what you thought about this, because I think the mainstream media will have to radically redefine itself in the interests of the people if it wants to regain the trust and relevance that it used to have.